Welcome to USMNT Weekly, your one-stop shop for all things men's national team. On this show, we're focusing on the November international window and the matches against Paraguay and Uruguay. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, Mr. Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor Rockwell. How are you?
I am doing well, albeit still a little bit sick. Ryan Bailey, always nice that when we have the international break, you flee the country, you go to your secure compound so you don't have to be privy to any of the national team information.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. I went to the echoiest room I could find in international waters, Taylor. That's where I am right now. So I apologise if my fidelity isn't quite where it should be. Audio fidelity, my fidelity is fine.
How did you find it? Was that a Google search?
Yeah, and when you go to Expedia, there's a checkbox for echoey room. So I always click that for the hotel. Yeah.
Always.
It's important. It's
You
important.
you didn't use the hole in the floor filter this time, though.
No, I tend to grey that one out these days. Hello, Graham Ruthven. How are you?
I'm very well. Ryan Bailey, enjoying the turtles behind you. Are you in Gianni Infantino's office bathroom? Give us a bit more insight into where you
found me out. You found me out, Graham. If you're watching on YouTube, smash like and subscribe, etc. I am in a Miami hotel room, and there are some decorative bowls on the wall. They're for audio. They're actually made of a really hard surface, so they could just make more echo. That's what they're
You
for.
better hope that they're fastened well to that wall then, if they're really hard.
Indeed. Joe Lowry's here. Hi, Joe.
Graham, do you think those bowls are going to fly off the wall and hit Ryan in the head? I mean, I thought gravity worked down, not out. Maybe. I mean, I don't know what happens in Florida, man. Maybe this is all topsy-turvy. What do I know?
I mean, I have seen FIFA's World Cup qualification process, particularly in AFC, and so I have no doubts that their office space is up to code, basically.
Understood.
So I'm not ruling out anything.
I thought gravity worked down, not out, is my favorite opening line so far this week, and we've had some bangers.
No way. Yesterday was way better.
Yeah, Jeff's was an all-timer, I have to say.
Well, I caught that one, yep.
Yeah.
If we had to guess, is Infantino, to your question, Graham, of that being Infantino's bathroom, is he like a gilded gold guy? Like, does he have a lot of gold trim, a la
He's now
the current president? Or is he like a blank walls, I live in a utilitarian shed sort of person?
I think that, but there's a guy in there. There's a cologne guy in there. You know what I mean?
just has a guy in the bathroom waiting.
Yeah.
Cleaning the white sneakers ready to go with the suit.
Haven't seen Saltby in a while. That's all. I'm just saying. Just asking questions.
All right. Maybe he'll crop up on our bonus feed, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show.
He will not.
He won't. No. You'll get bonus video on there, bonus episodes of the podcast, and most importantly, perhaps, access to our Discord server where all the cool kids are hanging out, talking USMNT and all of the soccers. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. We appreciate you if you are joining us there, and please do so if not. Thank you very much. All right, guys. What say we get to the USMNT action? We're looking at the Guys doubleheader, Uruguay and Paraguay. Paraguay this Saturday at 5 Eastern in Chester, Pennsylvania. Then on Tuesday, Uruguay in Tampa. Both of those teams, Taylor, have qualified for the World Cup already. In fact, they've both played each other in World Cup qualification. They most recently played in June. Paraguay won that 2-0. And they drew the other one 0-0 in qualification in September 2024. Graham.
Yeah, and just very quickly on the location of the two games, really nice that US Soccer took on board Pochettino's comments about the climate change from the last camp, and the US are playing in back-to-back games, check notes, Chester, Pennsylvania, and then Tampa in Florida. I'm sure that won't cause any problems.
It's just a classic, like, rein in your manager kind of situation. Like, you think you make the calls around here, Poch, the most famous person at US Soccer? No, we do, / that right-wing billionaire that we got to pay you. He does. That guy does. Don't worry about it. Play in Tampa Bay, darn it.
Oh, Graham, are you worried that the changing climate's going to give them the sniffles?
I mean, maybe
Not
that's how I've... Yeah, well, I saw those images. Yeah, he's rock solid. Yeah, that's... I mean, is that... That's a bit, right? Like, I remember Kieran Tierney used to do that when he played at Arsenal.
Do what, Graham? Let's assume not everyone has seen this obscure photo.
This one specific tweet? No? Okay.
At practice, USMNT practice, I presume in Pennsylvania, ahead of the first game, Seb Berhalter was the only player. It was like freezing temperatures, and basically he's the only player wearing short sleeves and shorts with no Under Armour, no kind of like base layer, no gloves, hard as nails. But like, I always think that's about showing how hard you are, rather than he went and had a nice hot bath afterwards.
Yeah, I know we're supposed to be talking about the Guayas, and I do want to do that, but that's the kind of stuff Poch is all about, I feel like.
It's
you know,
true.
Poch is like, oh,
Yep.
Sebi is naked. Like, that's what I want to see in a player. Like, I just see that so clearly.
Don't
for
give Gio
Pochettino
ideas.
Right.
Really, really caring about that. I think that's a brilliant move from Seb Berhalter.
I mean, yeah, it is a bit, like, for sure, but at the same time, it's a bit that works because it shows I'm here to play. I'm not here to have, gloves on and a snood and be protected. I'm out here trying to win. I'm out here trying to grind, and I totally agree with Joe. That bit is going to work well with Pochettino.
Yes, I hadn't considered that.
Him, Pochettino and Roy Keane doing that Michael Caine nod when they saw that. Very good. Indeed.
Yes.
Taylor, can we learn a little bit about Paraguay, please? What can we expect from Saturday's game in terms of the opposition here?
They're good. That is the gist for both of these teams. And yeah, in that game, the recent qualifier you mentioned, it is Paraguay beating Uruguay 2-0 at home. Home does tend to matter pretty strongly when it comes to World Cup qualifying in South America, really anywhere. But I think for Paraguay, I think they are the team that the U.S. can theoretically have more possession against, can be a bit more attacking, and can try a bit more. And I think that will shape the lineup that I'm going to build earlier. But I think they represent a pretty strong threat. They have a ton of talent in that team. Some of the names we know, like Miguel Almiron. There are two that I think are worth spotlighting, in my opinion, in their sort of base 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, whatever you want to go with. Julio Enciso seems to run riot whenever he is given the opportunity. Some people might remember him from his time at Brighton. He hits a banger like 2 or 3 years ago, and that has always kind of lodged him in the memory for me. And he still does that with Strasbourg, his current team where he's on loan, but also with Paraguay where he can score from distance. He will cut inside from the right, shoot with his left. He is very, very good. He will do that very, very often. He is going to be a problem for the United States. So too is Matias Galarza, a player that I knew nothing about until I started watching Paraguay games, and I really like him. Not just because he kind of looks like Jeremy Allen White, and I like the Bear, so I like Jeremy Allen White. So now I like Matias Galarza, but also because he's a very good player and can score goals, but can link up play. He can be a really effective creator. He can be an effective goal scorer. He's going to operate more centrally, while Enciso will be out wide. And I think Galarza is kind of a good representation of what this Paraguay team is right now. He's 23 years old. He plays for River, but I think is destined to make a move in the next year or two, and I think that's this Paraguay team. They have some veteran kind of steel and some familiar names, but then a lot of names that I think are on the verge of breaking through or already breaking through, as this is the case with Diego Gomez.
Yeah, I want to spotlight a few other key players. Gomez is a great one to tie in there, Taylor. There's a lot of physicality in this Paraguay team, and I think that bleeds into their style of play. So they did not have a good Copa America, and that led them to sacking their manager. They replaced their manager with Gustavo Alfaro, who's coached plenty in the Americas before. This is a Paraguay team that has not had more than 50% possession since October 15th, 2024. Not 2025, 2024. This is a team that in almost every game sits and plays against the ball. They typically play out of a back four, which, if we're watching what to expect from the USMNT in these games, we know that Pochettino has only used a back three in both attack and defense against teams that have done the same. So Paraguay, it seems like, will not fit that bill. I'm curious if Pochettino, even though he doesn't have a full squad, will continue with that precedent that he set, or if he will change something and stick with the back three anyway, given the lack of players in some positions that we'll talk about later on. But this is a Paraguay team that wants to be extremely, extremely physical. And you get that with Diego Gomez, where that is the best part of his game. You see that with some of the attacking profiles they have as well, with guys who thrive in transition. You mentioned Enciso, Taylor. Miguel Almiron is certainly a player to watch, even though he's not had his best season with Atlanta United. And then they have a couple of just rocks in the back. And this is maybe the part of their squad that I think is the best. Gustavo Gomez is their captain, 32-year-old center back who plays for Palmeiras, is like an every game player for a giant club in a giant league. And then you have Omar Alderete, who's a 29-year-old center back who plays for Sunderland. He's been doing plenty in the Premier League this year as well. There's a lot of quality in this team. I think they get worse each line up the field is sort of my overarching view on them. I think their defense is the strongest. I think their midfield is strong and aggressive. Andres Cubas is in that group as well. They can cover plenty of ground. I think their attack is where they're lightest, although, Taylor, you've done a good job to highlight. They can still hurt you. And Enciso probably is the scariest player of that bunch, but Almiron very much can do that as well. Antonio Sanabria, who starts for Cremonese, or Parma, or Como, or one of those. He's also someone who can do some damage as well. So this is a legit team. I mean, they're not a team that's going to win the World Cup. They're probably not a team that's going to make a deep run at the World Cup, but the U.S. is not necessarily in that category either. So I think these teams are fairly level with how these rosters are here, and this Paraguay group has a lot of time playing together.
Yep. Two things to build off what Joe said. First, with Omar Alderete, it's a sign of the times, a sign of the world we live in, that he's a Sunderland player. If I told you that he had played at Sunderland for the last 3 years, I do feel like maybe the thought of him goes down a little bit, because it's like, oh, okay, so he's like a championship player who kind of moved up with them and now is playing well. He signed for Sunderland this summer. He is representative of their big kind of spending spree, their advanced scouting system. He comes over from Getafe and has been a very strong performer for Sunderland, who have been very good this season. So it makes me instantly watch more of him and recognize that he's a critically important player to this team, and a physical one at that. To Joe's point about the physicality, Sanabria, who he mentioned playing for Cremonese, Parma, Sassuolo, somewhere in Italy, I noticed him in a couple different games make a point to stand in front of the goalkeeper whenever there is a cross caught or a corner caught and they try to break quickly. Sanabria will do the thing of step in front of the goalkeeper but then kind of pester him, but he never crosses the line into getting a booking for it. And that is a consistent thing with him. He seems to be very good about antagonizing and needling a little bit of the dark arts in there. And I think that's another good opportunity for the U.S. to kind of deal with a player who's going to cause problems physically and maybe emotionally, psychologically. And how do you deal with somebody who's going to be trying to mess with you, knows how to do it, but knows how to toe that line? That makes for an interesting battle as well.
I can confirm that Mateus Galaza does look like Jeremy Allen White, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if he could do Springsteen, but he does play for the River, so he's got a link there, at least.
Do we know if Jeremy Allen White can do Springsteen yet?
I haven't seen that movie yet.
Apparently he can do it pretty well. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's good. He actually
Does he have
looks
the
like...
hairpiece or no?
This might be a reference that only Graham gets, but he looks like if you combined him and Iga Swiatek, the tennis player.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of the vibe he's got going
Confirming
on.
that is the only other person who got that.
Hey,
based
Taylor,
on
real
my
quick,
blank expression, Joe's.
Should we do a boo tennis on 3? 1, 2, 3, boo tennis.
Boo tennis.
Little late.
It's the worst.
Timing was off. Graham, anything more to say about Paraguay?
I can bring in an F1 reference if you'd rather that. Not really, Ryan. I'm mainly focused on Uruguay, but yeah, it seems like since Alfaro came in, he was appointed after the Copa America. And of course, he was a name. When I saw that name, I was like, I recognise that name. Who did he coach in the past? He coached Ecuador at the last World Cup, so he probably came up in our previews for that tournament. So yeah, he seems to have made a bit of a difference since coming in. Paraguay, they finished really strongly, conceded 1 goal in their final 4 qualifiers. So they've got a sound defensive basis, and then they've got good technical operators higher up the pitch. So I think that they might not be the most sort of expansive opponent, but I think they'll be a tricky opponent nonetheless.
All right. Well, Graham, if you are focused on Uruguay, let's go to them. Whereas Paraguay are ranked 7th in the FIFA rankings in South America, Uruguay currently ranked 4th, if that means anything, the FIFA rankings. They're on good form as well. In the last window, they won both their games against Uzbekistan and the Dom Rep. So good form, I guess, for Uruguay. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I started watching a bit of those games and then realised that they were basically fielding an experimental team in both of those matches. So I went back to World Cup qualifying. I actually also caught a couple of their games in World Cup qualifying. I remember watching their 1-0 defeat to Argentina because it was on at a good time for me, and they have Premier have the rights in the UK. I also did a newsletter about how Bielsa was getting on as Uruguay manager around that
You've got
time.
a newsletter?
I do, yeah. I never mention it.
No.
I just find Bielsa as Uruguay manager fascinating. I knew it was going to be a fascinating appointment as soon as he was hired. And obviously this is a team that the US has faced and lost to at the Copa America. Bielsa, he makes this team interesting in itself. What's interesting is he's had his authority tested at various points of his time as Uruguay manager. Most notably after that Copa America, Luis Suarez came out and said that Bielsa had been mistreating players and his support staff, and that was a bit of a controversy. Suarez has since retired from international duty, so not much of an issue now. But with Bielsa, you always get that feeling that things are on the edge. Like, as good as Uruguay have been under him, if the whole thing was to blow up before the World Cup even starts next summer, that would not be surprising to me. But right now, as we're speaking, they are a very good team. Came through World Cup qualifying fairly comfortably. I think when Bielsa was hired, everyone hoped that he would wind back the clock and Uruguay would play like... Do you remember his old Chile team who won, win? Copa America twice? And they were like one of the most exhilarating international teams to watch of the last 20 years. That hasn't really been the case. I don't see Uruguay under Bielsa as this sort of like unstoppable attacking force. They scored 22 goals in 18 qualifiers, which isn't bad, but it's not great either. But they do have this really strong defensive unit. So they press from the front. They're really, really aggressive in doing that, usually through Darwin Núñez, who isn't in this camp, so that's probably good news for the US. Uruguay won the most high turnovers of any team in CONMEBOL qualifying, just under 10 a game. So even with Núñez out, the US should prepare themselves for that. And when they turn the ball over, they quickly punch the ball into the attackers to get into open space. They want to get shots away quickly after the counter press. They also rank, I found an Opta article after World Cup qualifying on how statistically they rank really highly for shots after a defensive action. And defensively, they'll do everything possible to stop opponents from getting crosses into the middle from out wide as well. I watched clips of a training drill that Bielsa does, where basically he puts a fullback in a box, not a literal box, it's a box on the pitch, although that would be fun to watch. And basically it's fullback against the winger, and the fullback has to stop the winger getting out of the box within a timed period. And then I saw another variation of that drill where they add in a midfielder against the winger, and the two of them have to combine to stop the winger getting out of the box. And basically when I see Uruguay play, that's what they'll do. They'll double up against those wide players. They want to stop service into the middle. So I think Uruguay will make it very difficult for the US to progress the ball. Bielsa obviously likes to use man marking pretty much wherever he can on the field. They are a very aggressive team out of possession. And then in possession, they want to create central overload. So I watched another Bielsa drill where, again, another box, and he actually marks them out on the pitch with tape, or I presume one of his coaching staff. And maybe that's why Luis Suarez was accusing him of mistreating his staff. They have to mark out 1 million boxes before every single game. But basically, he loads it up with midfielders. It's like a rondo, basically, in that box. And then after a while, it's like there's someone with a stop clock, and then they have to play the ball outside the box to someone, and then it comes back in. And basically what I think that's trying to imitate is they want to have control and tight areas in the middle of the pitch, have those little combinations between the midfielders, and then spread it out to a fullback or spread it out to a wide midfielder or an attacker. So I think that's kind of the pattern of play that the US will need to watch for in this game. As I mentioned, no Darwin Núñez, who's genuinely very, for all that Liverpool fans or whoever like to mock Darwin Núñez a bit, he's genuinely very important for this Uruguay team. He was one of the top scorers in CONMEBOL qualifying. And also no Fede Valverde, which is another huge boost to the US. He gives Uruguay so much in terms of, well, everything. Like ground coverage, protection to the fullbacks. He's a real valve for them getting forward as well. But nonetheless, you look through this Uruguay team, and listeners will be familiar with a number of names in this squad. Ronald Araujo, who obviously plays for Barcelona. Jose Jimenez, Rodrigo Bentancur, Manuel Ugarte, De Arrascaeta, who maybe listeners might not be so familiar with. He plays for Flamengo. We spoke about him at the Club World Cup. He's a very good player as well. So yeah, this is a Uruguay team with a lot of talent.
I know this is not a controversial thing to say about Real Madrid's vice captain, but he is very good, and especially very good for Uruguay, Fede Valverde. And I do think that will be an interesting wrinkle for them to overcome, because when he doesn't play, sometimes it's Nahitan Nandez, who plays in Saudi Arabia now. Sometimes they'll go Bentancur and Ugarte from Manchester United. Not a ton of creativity there. So how they bring any level of creativity into that midfield aside from De Arrascaeta will be an interesting wrinkle to keep an eye on. I noticed, Graham, a lot of quick interchanges, quick balls to the near wide areas, I guess the half spaces, and then crosses in as Uruguay flood numbers forward. So it will be sort of like a ball pinged into the striker, laid off to De Arrascaeta, laid off to a midfielder who plays it wide to an advancing fullback, and meanwhile all of them are sprinting into the box to get on the end of a cross. They tend to create overloads and tend to create chaos and get opportunities that way. I think they are going to be a very, very difficult team to beat. I won't be surprised if the U.S. don't get a point in this window. I won't be surprised if they draw Paraguay, lose to Uruguay, or vice versa. But I think these are two incredibly good tests for the United States against two national teams that are strong but weak in different ways, but I think pose huge threats if the U.S. isn't kind of switched on and ready to go from the jump.
Joe, anything to add on this one? It sounds like the US have got a couple of stern tests here, particularly due to the defences of both sides. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, Uruguay are the scarier team, even missing a couple of players. How both teams will set up, because that is the second game of the window, is a bit of a question. If there's going to be rotation, it's going to obviously be for that game. So there could be a little bit of a wrinkle there. It's already not the best version of Uruguay. But this is an Uruguay team that beat the U.S. in the Copa America, right? I mean, we know how good this Uruguay team is. They're certainly the scarier of the two. But these are, again, credit to U.S. Soccer. I feel like I say this every window. These are good opponents. These are really, really good friendly opponents nearing a World Cup. They're going to be strong opponents in March as well, which is the next window. There's a lot to like about the setup for these two games.
All right.
One other note from me that I think is worth keeping an eye on for U.S. supporters, Facundo Pellistri on the right side, 23-year-old right winger, formerly with Manchester United, now with Panathinaikos. He is real quick and pretty strong. And I think when teams get overextended or commit numbers into the attack and Uruguay win it back, they will look to play him in behind quickly. And he's going to be attacking a side that we would assume is like Max Arfsten, maybe Tim Ream on the left side. It feels like there's going to be space, and the U.S. is going to have to figure out how to kind of nullify that threat, because I think it's going to be there probably in the first 5 minutes. You will see a ball played into him. Max Arfsten, if he starts maybe overcommitted or out of position, somebody has to slide over, and I could see that being a problem the U.S. has to figure out in short order, because if they don't, they could be down 2 or 3-0 pretty quickly.
All right. On that note, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to run through the US roster in detail, and we're going to build our preferred 11s for these games. Join us then. Welcome back to the Total Soccer Show and USMNT Weekly. We are now going to run through the roster for this November Wimbo. That's a new word. Window, position by position. Joe, should we start off with the goalkeepers? Presumably it's Josh Friis who is going to be in nets for the time bit. I've said it again.
Matt Friis' brother coming in.
Josh Friis. He went to Yale, actually, instead of Harvard. But another Ivy
The
League school,
failure of the family.
Josh Friis is the rock drummer who has played for like a zillion bands. I always confuse them. I'm sorry. They're both the back line.
We all agree that Ryan's making that person up, right? That person doesn't exist.
I've never heard of that person. But if it is a real person, we're learning where your priorities lie.
Okay, so Joe, not Josh Friis,
Right.
but another Friis is likely to be number one and unseated. Is that fair?
It'll be Matt Friis. USMNT assistant coaches have been going to watch his games. He's the number one. The only notable thing from the goalkeeper group, really, other than it's funny that Jonathan Klinsmann's back in, is, as we talked about briefly last week, because we recorded just after this roster is dropped, but before Pochettino's press conference. So there is some new stuff here. The thing we talked about is just no Matt Turner feels really notable. There's only one window left before the USMNT's World Cup roster is named, and that's March. So if you're not in this window, it feels extremely unlikely that you're going to be in March and in at the World Cup. This is Matt Friis' job fully at this stage.
Who does he play for at this point? Does anyone know? I saw reports he was training with Crystal Palace. Which doesn't make any sense.
So the report was Matt Turner, who's Taylor's asking about, wanted to stay fit ahead of the international window. Turns out that wasn't so necessary. So he's still a New England Revolution player. He's under contract there. He will be playing for them next season, but he was attempting to stay sharp for this window, and that did not turn out.
Or maybe Glasner just has a blanket ban on Americans joining up with the USMNT. And Matt Turner's like, I'm not even your player. Nope, you're not. Nope. You're not going. You're not allowed to leave.
Sit in the corner with Chris. Get in the Bielsa box. All right, just get in there.
Because he's Nottingham Forest, loaned to Palace, recalled, sold to Lyon, and then loaned to the Revs, right?
We have
is
fun,
where we are.
We have fun.
I mean, he might be a cryptocurrency at this point.
Wow. He's just a concept.
Turner coin.
Very good. All right. Well, Glasner's got his passport anyway, so he's not coming. Graham, the centre-backs, Mackenzie, Ream, Robinson and Trusty. What are we making of the a problem position for the US here?
Yeah, what I'm making of this is you take Chris Richards out of this group and all of a sudden I'm hit with just how poor this pool of players is. This is not great. I mean, I'm not sure I expected.
Cool.
So for me, the headline is Austin Trusty's back, which I didn't expect to see him back, particularly because until like 2 weeks ago he wasn't playing for Celtic. He was in Brendan Rodgers' bomb squad. But it might just be a process of elimination because Richards is not allowed to leave Crystal Palace. CCV is out injured for. It kind of looks like he might miss the World Cup now. Actually, like he might be out for as much as 5 months. That takes him up to early April, and then it's like a month left of the Scottish season. So that might be him, CCV. And Trusty is back playing for Celtic since Rodgers left. He hasn't been great for Celtic. Like, he should have been sent off against Rangers a couple of weeks ago for kicking the Rangers goalkeeper in the head. That's not advisable. You shouldn't do that in a professional soccer game. And his athleticism is useful, but he's still shaky in moments, and because he's not playing with CCV next to him, he's out injured, as I just said. He's kind of missing that presence next to him, so I don't really feel great about any of these players, to be honest. Am I being too harsh on that?
I mean,
well, I think, Joe, can I say, I think you're being a little
please.
harsh, because as I understand it, that is how you begin an Old Firm derby, no? Like, your introduction is to kick the goalkeeper in the head. I thought that was like a way of saying hello.
It's like a custom. Yeah.
So I think he's just
but
doing
only
what's
in those
expected.
16 Old Firms every season.
Oh,
Not
my.
in the other game.
Joe, go ahead.
The half season of the Old Firm matchups before you get to the other part of the league season. These center backs are not good, right? These are not options that USMNT fans should feel good about. The Richards absence is fascinating because I think, Graham, you said, and I know what you meant by this, and probably listeners do too, but just in case, Graham said that Richards isn't allowed to leave Palace. Well, that's not true. It's just that Palace have thrown a huge fit. Glasner came out publicly and threw a fit about how Pochettino played him in both games, even though he's been running Chris Richards into the ground. And if he's that concerned about Chris Richards, I don't know, maybe you could give him a half off now and then, I suppose. I mean, I also understand that these parties have to work collaboratively. But the reason Richards isn't in here is because he's managing some minor injury that he's been playing through. I think it's fine to give him this window off. It just makes you realize how bad things are without him. Yeah. For everything that Graham just said about Austin Trusty, completely legal and regular kick aside, it is shocking to me that Banks is not in this bunch. Like, I mean, he's playing at a higher level. He's doing so many things that have value. And I know I just did this whole thing a couple weeks ago about how he's not clearly better than these other options. He's not. But is he worse? Is the pool so good that you can't afford to give a rising prospect minutes in a window like this when you're missing your best center back? I don't know, man. It seems silly to me. I'm not losing any sleep over it. And I don't think it probably really matters a ton in this World Cup cycle, but it might matter a little bit. Banks might be good enough to start games of the World Cup come the end of this season after an entire season's worth of minutes. Mm-hmm. And Poch just seems like has no interest in actually testing that theory.
This says to me that Poch doesn't think he's a player for this cycle, and I'm not sure that Poch is in a position to see Banks as a next cycle guy when you see the rest of the pool and the fact that he's playing games in the Bundesliga. It's also just another case of, I mean, honestly, I've tuned out of so many of Poch's comments, and this is just another example where he says he has the potential to be one of the best centre-backs in Europe, and then when the pool looks like this, doesn't call him up. Like,
well, we don't, Graham. To be fair, he might have said even nicer thing about Miles Robinson, right? I mean, we just don't know. It's possible he said it. Yeah, exactly.
I like the idea of Pochettino being like, no, Banks is a next cycle guy for whoever is going to coach the national. I mean, me definitely. I'll be around for sure. It's going to be me in charge. I also love the idea of Crystal Palace like fully allowing Chris Richards to leave, but a la like a Nathan For You episode. It's like, no, you can. You just have to go through a series of increasingly small doors, and behind one is an alligator that you have to get past. But by all means, like, you're welcome to leave. And he just kind of correctly chose not to do so. I am also not so inspired by the center backs and wish we had a little bit more depth. Would have loved to see Noki Banks, but alas, here we are. I will say, Graham, you soured it by saying Trusty has continued to not look good. But there was a part of me that was like, well, maybe being in Brendan Rodgers' bomb squad isn't the worst thing if it's gone historically bad and he's sacked. Maybe he wasn't the problem, but it sounds like he might have been part of the problem.
Indeed.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well,
kick somebody in the head. Get after it.
That's the spirit. Taylor, the fullback group, how are we feeling about that? We've got Dest, Freeman, Scally, Tolkien, and stupid sexy Max Afston. How are we feeling about that?
Well, as everyone knows, I am overly enthusiastic and incredibly excited about Joe Scally, much to the shock of Joe Lowery when I said that last week. I am interested to see Joe Scally. I think, spoiler alert, I don't think we're going to see him start at the very least the first game. I do think we will see him play fullback in this camp instead of that right center back spot. I feel like if anybody's going to do that, it's going to be Alex Freeman. Overall, I think it's an interesting fullback group. Still very concerned about missing Jedi Robinson and would love to see him in there. So maybe that means we experiment with Dest on the other side. My guess is that it is Max Arfsten on the left and it's Serginho Dest on the right, and we see how they can work together and how Dest can work and be that kind of creative outlet we might need him to be. Yeah,
I'm really worried about Jedi. Like the fact that he isn't playing at all makes me. And look, obviously, I know nothing, but I'm starting to get worried that he might need another piece of surgery, and then the clock is really counting down for him at the World Cup. So, with that in mind, I would like to see Max Arfsten start in both games, or at least get a good sample size of minutes. We've seen loads of Max Arfsten this year, but nonetheless, I want to see the reps. And I'm also I'm trying out becoming a Max Arfson guy. Like, I kind of like him. I said this in our Slack chat, and I think he's fun. And yes, he's got his weaknesses, but I don't know. If it's a back three with wing backs, I think the system kind of masks those weaknesses quite well.
Just to be clear, Graham, when you say he's got his weaknesses, you mean defending?
Yeah, all of that.
Cool.
Basically, all the stuff in his own half. But like I think the last couple camps where he's played as the wing back, and look, we don't know if that's going to be the system for the US here, but he's looked good. And I do think he offers something on the attacking side of the ball. So basically what I'm trying to get to is the framing now with Jedi still not playing is sort of shifting for Max Arfson, where we're now maybe looking at someone else who could start as an alternative at the World Cup next summer.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I would like to see him start both games. I think because if we don't have Jedi, if that is a concern, we've got to have somebody in there, and this is an opportunity for him to play against two strong World Cup caliber opponents and see how he does and see how he adjusts. And we talked about this a little bit with the Cruz playoff elimination, how he was struggling at times, but I think grew into the game, got a little bit more physical, and then obviously continued to contribute to the attack. So I would like to see what he can do against Paraguay and Uruguay. And does he start to kind of be more defensively solid? Do they cover for him and have players who can kind of shift over and help him with that load? The way the U.S. navigates this will be very fascinating, given the potential ramifications of a Jedi injury.
Will he get by against the Guy guys? Time will tell. Joe, the central midfield group, we've got Berhalter, Morris, Rodin, Tessman, Tim Tillman coming in, and some withdrawals with injury for Tyler Adams and Sean Zawadzki. How are we feeling? Obviously, I suppose Weston McKennie, if he is indeed a central midfielder, is an absentee in this one.
Yeah, I guess we'll lump him in here, although we don't know if I mean, it seems like Poch views him more as an attacking midfielder, but really Weston McKennie is this positionless anomaly. It's wild to me that McKennie's not in this camp.
Yep.
Poch explained his reasoning for it, which is that there's been a managerial change at Juventus, and we want him to stay there and have a chance to go and make his run in. You know what I think would be really cool? I'm just going to pilot this as a theory. What if the U.S. men's national team manager called in his best players when they were healthy to the national team? I don't know. I'm just going to try it. I just said it. That's the first time I said it. I've been thinking about it in the shower recently.
Witchcraft.
Look, I understand where Pochettino's coming from. I do. And it's possible that he's right and I'm wrong. I want to be very clear about that. It probably doesn't matter a whole lot in the grand scheme of things that McKennie's not here for this window. It's just so weird, man. Like, why does every tie, tie goes to the runner, why does every tie go to the clubs? It just seems like across the board, Pochettino's like, no, you go first. No, please. You go ahead. You go right ahead. I would love for you to go first.
My joke conspiracy brain, Joe, goes to Pochettino is just evaluating future club options. And it's like, well, I don't want to make Juve mad because that could be interesting. Palace, that could be fun. All right. No, I don't want to annoy the Palace board. You can keep your players. Don't worry about it. Juve, I don't need your guy. It's all good. I mean, we always talk about that, about a player being left with the club in the international break with a new manager to kind of get reps and get experience. I do wonder, going the other way, does the manager does it look better for the player to be called up by the national team and to be a critical player for that national team? If you're the new manager coming in, doesn't that make you think okay, that guy's got value versus that guy is surplus to requirement from his country?
This makes no sense. I'm looking through the Juventus site right now. They've got 10 players on international duty. So even with McKennie staying behind, Spalletti's probably going to have days off. Maybe not even going to be at the training ground to see Weston McKennie putting in his reps and during international duty. This does not matter.
He has to watch the duck, Graham. He's on duck duty.
The duck in the battered Fiat Punto
right.
or Panda or whatever it is that Spalletti drives around. Yeah, this just makes no sense to me. I'm at a loss to explain any of it. And that then leads me to think that Poch isn't telling the full story and that there is something else. And look, I don't want to go full conspiracy brain. It might just be as simple as he doesn't really like Wes McKennie as a player. But I have learned throughout this entire cycle, talking about the USMNT, to trust my gut on things. During the 2002 World Cup, it was the Gio Reyna stuff, and we were like, is there something going on here? Let's not be too conspiracy brain. There was something going on. Then after, then with the Berhalter stuff at the Copa America, and then the Pulisic thing for the Gold Cup, and maybe the Pulisic thing was blown out of proportion, but there was something there, and I just can't shake the feeling that this is not, it's not the story that Poch is telling us, but that's kind of pure speculation. It's so weird to me.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think that there can be logical arguments. I'm just struggling to come up with what they are. And I think that's where I start to get a little bit confused, concerned, is when you could say if he wasn't playing, if it were the same cycle of Spalletti has come in, McKennie's been on the bench, you could make the argument like, okay, but now he's got an opportunity to impress in camp. But McKennie has played all but like 5 minutes under Spalletti, so he is clearly a key part of the team, albeit as a right winger / right wing back. But if he's playing for the club, if he's not injured, if they are releasing other players for the international break, if this is a U.S. team that is pretty threadbare in the midfield department and needs a veteran leader with some level of ability and skill, all that feels like it should open the door to McKennie. And so then I'm left with the ideas of like, maybe he wants to see what these guys can do, the understudies and the maybe C-teamers, and can they stake a claim? Can they show that they should be in a World Cup squad if somebody's hurt? But it's a lot of like maybes and conditionals at that point, and it's not the kind of clear line of reasoning and thought that I would prefer at this point in roster construction.
Yeah, and that may be the explanation, Taylor, but how does that square with a couple windows ago Poch telling us that the time for experimentation would be over past September, right? Like we're basically the flip side of that argument was we're going to call in the experienced guys who are going to play for us at the World Cup, but we also know what Weston can offer us, so we're not going to call them in.
He meant September 2026. That's
right. Okay, after the World Cup, Graham. After the World Cup. And
the next manager, I mean me. Yeah, I'll experiment then.
The McKennie thing is the weirdest of all this. It's also a bit weird to me that Yunus Musah is not called in over someone like Sean Zawadzki on the initial roster or Tim Tillman. Look, I understand that this year could not be going worse for Yunus Musah. At the same time, I have a hard time thinking that he's going to offer the USMNT less than some of the other players that are called in this group or that were called in the initial squad. Johnny Cardoso also a healthy scratch, I suppose. Not that he's come back and played a bunch for Atleti. This is a fine position group. It's fine. If you're not going to have Adams and McKennie, what this looks like is reasonable enough. At least maybe I would quibble with the Musah thing because I still believe in his talent and I think he needs a boost, and he's just not going to get it.
All right. Moving on to the attacking midfielders and wide attackers, we've got Aronson and Luna. Christian Pulisic, obviously not here. He did get a few minutes for Milan last weekend, but not in this setup. But the big story, Taylor, Gio Reyna and how much he will play in these two games. Rubs hands together.
I mean, that is the big story, and one that I have like circled as being a very interesting part of this camp, because I don't think he will start the first game. I think if he does, that tells us a lot about how strong he has looked in camp, because it does feel to me like Diego Luna has earned his stripes. Brendan Aronson of late, for club and country, has been more reliable and more representative of, I think, what Pochettino wants that position to be. So if Reyna comes in and is starting that first game, it tells us, I think, that he is already kind of elevating his performance and doing what's required. I personally don't think that that's going to happen. I think he will end up getting minutes in these two games, and maybe he starts the second one. But I think, regardless, it's exciting to have Gio Reyna back in the national team, and I hope it goes well for him. I hope he embraces the opportunity, because I think it is potentially his last chance to kind of cement consideration, if not an outright spot in the World Cup roster.
Yeah, I just hope we see a good amount of him on the field so that we know, right? Like, I don't want this rumbling on, like, one way or the other. Either he doesn't make much of an impression and we can kind of all move on and the US can move on, or he does make an impact and he becomes part of the national team again. I'm just remembering how Pochettino had him in camp in March, right? And then barely used him. So there would be precedent for him not really featuring much. I want to have some evidence to actually talk about Gio Reyna from.
Yeah. I mean, so weirdly, I guess I think about this slightly differently. First of all, there's a 0% chance we're going to see Gio Reyna start a game in this window. Just like let's remove that thought. Gio Reyna's not. He doesn't start games. He doesn't play enough minutes. He's not healthy enough to do that.
Berhalter out.
So that's not going to happen. First of all, at least I would be utterly floored. I would love it, to be clear. I'm a big Gio Reyna guy. I would be floored.
No.
The other, I know. I've hit it so well, Graham. The other piece of this is I don't even think we need to see Gio on the field to evaluate him as a player. If Gio Reyna's on the field, he's going to be the USMNT's best player. I believe that firmly. What we learn by Gio Reyna getting on the field is if Pochettino's actually going to play him. Like, as stupid as that sounds, the only thing that we learn by Gio Reyna stepping on the field is how Poch feels about Gio Reyna. We know Gio Reyna's quality. That has been blindingly obvious since he was a child, to be totally honest. So all that we're going to learn in this window, number one, I suppose, is if Gio Reyna is healthy enough to play minutes, which is never something we should take for granted. And then also, if Pochettino's not going to do what he did in March, which Graham just referenced, which was to leave him on the bench for the entire game in a game where he very clearly could have helped the team. So we don't know what this is going to look like. I just certainly wouldn't be holding my breath about a Gio Reyna start. The rest of this position group, and I suppose Gio is tied into this too, a bit fortunate in that they don't have any competition for minutes. Pulisic injured, Weah injured, Zendejas injured, Tillman injured. I think that's the only way Gio gets into this roster in the first place, is because there's nobody else. The trick here is that there's just no one to like really stretch the field out wide. And I suppose that's going to have to come to the fullbacks, and we can talk about that in the third segment. But this is a really depleted U.S. attack. There's going to be a lot of stress on whoever those kind of half-space attackers are from this group, and then the number 9 as well.
Joe, I have a respectful quibble. That's the segment of the show we're in, respectful quibble hour. I know you have long said that about Reyna, and I understand the reasoning behind it.
That he's good? Which part? Sorry.
That he is the best player if he's on the pitch, if he's the most talented player on the pitch. But there is an idea that talent can erode, no? And if you don't play for a long time, if you have a lot of injuries, if you kind of keep being in bad form and bad circumstances, you don't continue to develop, some of the polish wears off, and you can look a little bit sloppier. Yeah. You can lose some of that ability. It seems like you are not embracing the idea that might have happened to him.
Yeah, I'm skeptical about that theory while recognizing that totally is real, right? I mean, if I don't play soccer for 3 years and I go and kick around, I'm gonna be worse than I was before. Gio Reyna has never really played professional soccer in his career. I know it's a bit hyperbolic, but you know what I'm saying, right?
Like you look at Dortmund.
You look at his minutes. The dude hasn't played more than 350 minutes in a season since 2023. It's basically 3 years ago now. I mean, he doesn't play soccer, and yet when he comes and plays for the U.S. men's national team, we saw this in 2024. He's the best player on the field. So I don't believe that there's any real reason for that to have changed in that time. When I watch him in the Bundesliga now, he still looks like he's going to be the USMNT's best player. The problem is he doesn't run. So I suppose I'm being a bit hyperbolic about that too. On the ball, he does things that no other U.S. player can do. He provides other challenges also. But honestly, Taylor, I'm not really concerned about that because that's been the whole career for Gio Reyna. And every time he turns up for the U.S. and actually plays games, he does stuff that nobody else can do.
We'd like to see that though on the field, right? Like
yeah,
Joe, what you're saying,
good.
like when you were saying you're not too concerned about him getting on the field. Is that not a contradiction to the McKennie point where we want to see the best players in the field to see how they all fit together? Like
I want
that might well be the case that he's the USA's best player, but make me feel a lot better if we saw it this close to a World Cup.
Yeah, I am by no means trying to contradict that at all. I want to see Gio Reyna on the field. What I was pushing back against was, well, we need to see Gio and like how he fits in this group. I know that doesn't really score with the McKennie thing, but we don't need to see Gio Reyna on the field to prove Gio Reyna's talent. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. I do want to see Gio Reyna on the field because that proves that Pochettino might give him minutes in games that matter. And if Gio Reyna is healthy enough to give you 20 minutes in a game that matters, he's worth taking to a World Cup, in my opinion. And if you're so worried about his ego, if you're Pochettino and you send him home after maybe causing some problems around camp, that's why you're here, Pochettino, is to control egos. Like, you're the biggest name in U.S. soccer history. I think you can handle it. So, I mean, that's where I fall on this. I do want to see Gio Reyna on the field. The point I was trying to make is to me, it's not a prove it moment for Gio. He's already proven his quality. If he gets on the field, that means he has already proven it to Pochettino off the field.
I still think it's attitude more than anything else, personally. And I think that there have been at times, Graham, to your point about 2022, there are just moments where we see him and we can see him having a bad attitude. We can see him not being engaged with teammates and not being involved. And we understand the reasons why and his arguments for that. And he recently said, that he's not fully in the wrong on that one still, which is a fine perspective to have. But I think that's what I look at, is if we see him starting for the U.S., to me it means that at the very least, his attitude and enthusiasm in training have been evident such that Pochettino rewards it or appreciates it. I think I could also see a scenario in which he's like, why is he so sad all the time? Like, what's this guy's deal? Why we're training, we're having fun. What's up? And like, you can have those kind of personality clashes, those just energies that don't mix, and that feels like a thing that Pochettino could factor in. So if we do see him, I think it's telling that means that they've overcome that potential obstacle.
Real quick, just to finish off with the strikers, all three doing pretty well with their respective clubs. Balogun, Pepe, and Wright. Graham, is Balogun's gig here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I want to see both Balogun and Pepe in particular. But if it's the first game that Poch is picking the strongest 11 for, I want to see Balogun start. I'm pretty certain in my mind now that Balogun is the right person for that place in the team. And look, some of that might just be down to timing and circumstance. And Pepe was injured while Balogun had a good run for the US. But I want to see him get as many reps as possible, especially if it's two different number. If it's the dual 10 system, or even if it's not the dual 10 system and it's a different supporting cast around him, I want to him to get used to playing with as many different supporting players as possible. When I think at this point, it's his jersey for the World Cup. But yeah, I'd like to see Pepe get a decent chunk of minutes as well, just as a reward for basically what he's done at PSV recently.
Okay. Any movement on that, guys? All good?
No, I'm good.
I mean, I think the only thing I have, because we're going to get to rosters here in a second, it would be interesting, given the lack of midfield options, and even though we are past the point of experimentation, now we know it's September 2026 instead of September 2025, like, we could have Pepe and Balogun start, and it's a 3-4-1-2, and that would be interesting. That's a thing we haven't seen, but we also haven't seen, I can't remember the last time both of them were healthy and in camp together. So I was curious if we might see a little experimentation on that front. I'm not saying it's likely, but it would be interesting if we got to see them both playing at the same time.
Two strikers, Aguirre guys wouldn't know what hit them. Good stuff. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to build some rosters. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly, in which our guys here are going to pick their rosters, the starting 11s, I should say, for the Paraguay and Uruguay games. Taylor, how are you going to approach this one?
I am going to approach this one. Normally, my roster is like 70% what I think the coach will do, 30% what I would like to see them do. I've tried to make this 100% what I think Poch will do. And I look at this group of players, especially in the midfield, and I don't see enough quality there on the ball. I don't see enough individual creativity and 1v1 talent that you can kind of go with a conventional midfield and just kind of fingers crossed. I think what I would like this to be is an opportunity for the U.S. to experiment with a weakened team against two stronger World Cup opponents. And so I think with that in mind, I would like to see it be a more defensive, frustrated, like try to frustrate and counter, try to capitalize on set pieces game plan. And I think a back three favors that. It gives the U.S. more kind of defensive depth and defensive options, but I think it also covers certain areas that might not otherwise be covered, and I think it allows you to be a bit more direct in the way you're playing and bypass some of that midfield, with the caveat that I think against Paraguay, the U.S. should try to have more of the ball, so that also informs my lineup, but I've gone with the kind of 3-4-2-1 with Matt Friis in goal.
Oh, not Josh Friis. Okay, fine. Any movements on...
I would have if he were still filling in for Guns N' Roses, but now that he is no longer doing that, I'm back to Matt Friis.
Back with 9 Inch Nails, I think, actually, these days. But, yeah.
Josh for me, Clive.
Very good, and I assume so for Graham too. Graham, what's your backline looking like?
So I've also gone for a back three. I've got to be honest, I know Joe has raised in the past an astute point about how with the back three, Poch is matched up against some praise for you there, Joe.
Thanks, Graham.
After we came after you for your Gio Reyna point. I hadn't quite considered that. I'd maybe forgotten about that a little bit. So it wouldn't surprise me if we did see a back four. But I've gone for a back three. I've gone for left centre-back Tim Ream, centre-back Mark McKenzie, I guess. And then I brought Joe Scally into my back three as my as my right-sided centre-back. So Taylor's suggesting, have you gone Ream and McKenzie the other way round?
Yeah. I've got McKenzie on the left, Ream central, and Robinson on the right. When they've gone in the back three, Miles Robinson seems to be unkillable. So Miles Robinson goes in. Tim Ream, I think, anchors that one. And this is where I said I'm trying to do what I think Poch will do. And I personally would like to see Joe Scally given that opportunity. However, we've wanted to see him be more attacking. He has been more attacking, and it is only as he has been a right wing back for Gladbach and a successful right wing back at that we now see him called back into camp. So it would then be weird when he has finally done the attacking stuff and gotten more involved to be like, great, now you're a right center back. Stay home. So I am assuming instead that we will see Scally get like maybe 20, 25 minutes against Paraguay with Dest starting. But I would love to see Joe Scally start. But yeah, I had McKenzie, Ream, Robinson.
Okay. Joe, have you got a back three?
I do not have a back three, and this is... I got to be honest, I had a really hard time putting together a lineup of what I think Poch will do or even what I want in this camp because there's just so many guys missing. Also, Dest being back in does present some wrinkles because Dest has only been in for one window for Pochettino so far. That was in September. That was the South Korea-Japan window. And he plays in that window. But Dest being in makes things a little bit more complicated in a way tactically because without Dest, you can leave the right back at home. And what I mean by that is if it's Scally playing that right back role, you can leave him deep with the center backs. Even if it's Freeman, even if it's not his best role, Freeman is not so good going forward that you have to push him into the attack. So you can just leave Freeman, and we saw it throughout most of the Gold Cup. You can leave Freeman back as the third center back, which you know Pochettino likes to do. He likes to build with three center backs and two midfielders, even if that third center back is not one at heart. Sort of he'll use a player in that position. So if Dest isn't around, you keep the right back at home, you push Arfson or Jedi, whoever it is, at left back into the attacking line, and then you have a right-sided attacker hold the width, and you have that 3-2-5 structure that Pochettino has mostly used. But with Dest around, and with Arfson, the other guy who's most likely to get minutes on the left, that means your structure changes a little bit. Or at least how you get into that structure changes, because now both of your outside backs want to go forward. So I want to be clear, the back three, I think, is the simplest way to get both outside backs forward, because then you just have the three center backs that you want to build out of anyway. You can go let Dest and Arfson be free, and you give them a bit more defensive cover. I think that makes sense, but I've decided to take on the challenge of building out this back four because Uruguay and Paraguay don't play out of back fours and back threes, and for reasons I said in the first segment, I think that based off of Pochettino's history, it might be a back four to match up against those types of systems. So anyway, my center backs for this window, I went with Ream and McKenzie. I don't care. And then my outside backs, I had Max Arfson and Serginho Dest.
Okay, very good. Taylor, your outside backs in your lineup?
My left wing back is Max Arfson. My right wing back is Serginho Dest.
Graham, any movement?
Same.
Okay.
Retweet.
Graham, central midfielders?
So my kind of two true central midfielders in this system, I've gone for Christian Roldan, and alongside him, I mean, I could have gone in any direction here, but I've gone for Tanner Tessman.
I thought I would have to fight for this one. Wow, Graham, same midfield, especially because I think Roldan seems to be the one that Pochettino likes when the U.S. is going to have more of the ball and to be a little bit more controlled in that possession and make smart decisions and not cough it up cheaply. And I think against Paraguay, that's the team that I would like the U.S. to try to have more possession against. So, yeah, I went Roldan and Tessman as well.
Joe, who's in the middle for you?
I also have Roldan, and I have Tanner Tessman. I basically am picturing this as sort of a 4-2-3-1 that maybe you get into that attacking line of five in a few different ways. But I think Pochettino loves Roldan. He's made that very, very clear. And I have not been impressed by the other candidates in midfield. That means Berhalter and Morris. I don't really have an appetite to see them, to be honest. I don't want to see Tim Tillman. Apologies to Timmy. So I went with Tessman sort of by default at that stage.
Okay. And who's your attacking three in front of those, Joe?
My attacking three for this window, there aren't a lot of guys to choose from. I have Diego Luna as maybe the central most attacking midfielder at my number 10, floating maybe a little bit more towards one side or the other as the game goes on. I have Aronson, and then I have Haji Wright also in my starting 11 because I don't think Gio Reyna can start, as I already said, so he's off the board. And at that point, you've used up all of your attacking midfielders because that's just how injured the pool is right now. Haji Wright can play in the half spaces. He can play as a winger. We've seen that before. I'm going to have him on the left side kind of slashing in behind, and then I'll have all those guys behind my striker.
Okay, very good. Taylor, I'm assuming you've got a couple of attacking midfielders and a striker?
You got it. Luna, Aronson, and then Balogun up top. Having said earlier, it would be interesting to have it be Luna, Aronson starts on the bench, and it's Pepe and Balogun up top, and you've got like one to aim long for, one to play in behind. But I think if we stick with kind of what they've done previously, it will be Luna and Aronson and Balogun.
Graham?
Yeah, retweet again. Taylor and I are very, very similar. I think the only difference is you've got, who was your right-sided centre-back again, Taylor?
Robinson.
Yeah, Robinson, and I've got Joe Scally, but otherwise exactly the same as Taylor.
Yep.
I've got Aronson in from the start, even though I was tempted to put Reyna in there. I agree with Joe, like it feels more likely that he'll be coming into games off the bench. Also, Aronson deserves a reward. Like, he played well in the last camp, and he's also playing well for Leeds at the moment, which hasn't always been the case. Like, yeah, he's been he's got a good amount of minutes over a long period of time for Leeds, but as I've mentioned a couple of times, he has been criticised a lot by Leeds fans, and right now he's getting quite a bit of praise for the impact that he's having on games. So yeah, let's get him in the team and see if he can back up.
Very good. And Joe, I presume you've got Balogun up top. How are you feeling about what you've built there?
I feel fine about it. It's not a great roster in general. I mean, you're missing so many key players. You're missing your best center back. You're missing your probably your most consistent outside back. You're missing your top two central midfielders in Adams and McKennie. You're missing your best attacker in Pulisic. You're missing maybe another starter in that attacking line as well. I mean, this is a struggling U.S. group when you sift through all the injuries and absences. But for what's available, I don't think Pochettino can really go wrong when he's building this lineup. I don't much care, to be honest, if it's a back three or a back four. I think we'll see some similar structures in attack regardless if somebody ends up kind of moonlighting as that third center back at times in the build-up. And really, you look at a lot of these players outside of, I don't know, if we didn't see Balogun start. I have such a hard time believing he wouldn't, right? Or or that it wouldn't be for a direct purpose. Maybe Balogun is nursing something or whatever it is. I don't think it matters much which of the attacking midfielders start and maybe exactly where they play, barring something absurd. Maybe it is just central midfield that I feel strongly about. I do think Roldan and Tessman, the pivot that we all have, I think that is the best of the bunch. But I don't know, if Christian Roldan doesn't start, am I really going to get bent out of shape about it? No, I'm not. Maybe like a tiny bit, but not a lot. So I don't think Pochettino can really go wrong with these lineups. I do think, though, he has to think about stacking the Paraguay game with as many players who can help break a team down, and the Uruguay game is going to be a different, more physical, a little bit more open challenge.
Yeah. You will get bent out of shape if Reyna starts, though, to be clear, Joe.
I mean, bent out of shape in a positive way, that's for darn sure.
Very good. All right, big test for the US coming up with the Guy guys in this window. Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much for your analysis in this here episode.
My pleasure. Thank you, my friend, and your echoey Infantino bathroom.
Graham, thank you.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey. You can knock on the door now and ask him to let you out.
No, I don't want to see him in his towel again. That's enough. That was enough. Joe Lowry, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, Ryan.
And thank you very much, listener, for joining us on this one. We'll be back on the feed very shortly indeed. But for now, bye!